Hello, folks. I hope it hasn't been too bad for you. I know it's been a little while since we've done a video. Particularly, I've been working on work, which has been quite busy. Uh, and I've also been doing a number of other tasks, such as, but not limited to, joining a bug bounty program and working through a couple different bugs. That brings me to my first topic tonight. The bug bounty program I was working on had a bank as a client, and I was fascinated by this immediately with my experience in payment pro. Well, let's back up. With my experience at a cybersecurity company, as well as my experience as a payments processing organization, that's something I feel uniquely skilled at working with. So I immediately jumped in and started penetration testing them. Within scope was their web application that allowed for sign up and permits you to select the uh, well, thinking this through, it permits you to create the account, fund the account, and do a variety of other tasks that one would expect to have involved. So I went through the process of penetration testing this application, and we're not going to say who, but it was a web-based application with the sign-up form. I went through the sign-up, and I discovered that there were quite a bit of opportunities to inject, and the injection stayed, was presented back to the user from the server side, and ultimately resulted in the ability of a user to bypass the KYC requirements. So I submit it. And the bug bounty program had reached back out and said, this is likely something that's not going to be able to be reported on because it is scoped in such a way that using one user's token to access another user is off limits, despite the fact that it's possible. And anything that's backstopped by KYC is not deemed a valid reportable finding. Using KYC as a backstop for operations is fine, and for legal purposes is fine. However, if you are preventing your bug bounty program from turning in bugs and presenting write-ups that take advantage of injection, that bypass the filters within the client side of the application and present directly to the server known invalid or incompatible data, you are likely doing it wrong. Here's why. If you're going to allow others to inundate your humans that are validating the system's integrity, you've now made a human operator the last line of defense. You knew that you had the opportunity to prevent the user from providing invalid input. You are able to curtail the input of invalid user data, and you should likely limit it to that which makes sense. For example, if you have region restrictions of some sort that are preventing you from doing business in a, let's say, Afghanistan, you probably don't want to have the ability for your users to sign up from Afghanistan. We're picking on them for no good reason. So, that being said, if in your dropdown there is no Afghanistan, yet I am able to inject the word Afghanistan and have the web application function correctly, then you've probably missed the point. Yes, your KYC auditors, the humans that are actually performing the customer verification steps, are likely going to catch that. What happens if there's a rogue actor that doesn't care anymore? For example, they're going to leave their job and they know this, and they're just clicking approve. You've invited the opportunity for malfeasance. That's kind of on you, isn't it? Gosh, if I was the one building a bank application, I would certainly want myself to be the known weakest link. And I would expect that server side validation of the user's inputs should prevent that from ever being a possibility, especially if it was a region restriction where I didn't want to do business in a particular region, or I couldn't do business for a variety of reasons. So that tops our broadcast off quite nicely. That kind of lets me move away from that and quit thinking about it, because yes, we've had some conversation back and forth, and we're waiting for the end client to respond back to the bug bounty program. So we're looking forward to hearing from them. It would be really nice. No, I won't disclose who it was. Not even an abstraction. It's a bank. It's not that bank. It's probably not a bank you're familiar with. But that being said, another topic that comes to mind that has been brought up as of late is the question of broadcast domains. Broadcast. The question of broadcast domains and VLANs. VLANs isolate broadcast domains. Whether it's a PVLAN, which is stopping at the switch's edge, or a VLAN that is spanning multiple ports, it's continuing the ability of broadcast traffic to be forwarded between ports. That's the definition of a VLAN, is a layer 2 isolation. You have the luxury on some manufacturers' devices, such as Cisco, to isolate the port itself and use a private VLAN and permit the BPDU guard to be enabled, and that will stop the transit of VLANs and in continuation beyond that port's interface edge. It will also prevent the ability of your, let's say you had VLAN 1 and it was on port 1. So you have a standard configuration port. If you had a trunk port next to it on port 2, and the trunk port had a native VLAN of, say, 200, the trunk port's native VLAN 200 is not going to be able to communicate with port 1 under any circumstances. It separates them. It breaks up the broadcast domain. Furthermore, if you go down the line and you say port 3 has VLAN tagging enabled and is a trunk port and is permitted to trunk VLAN 200, now you have extended that broadcast domain from the physical port, the native port 2, onto the VLAN 200. So in essence, any device that's trunked to 200 is going to be able to communicate with whatever is plugged into VLAN, or plugged into your second port to native VLAN 200. So an example of where this would be useful is if you had a printer and the printer needed to be shared via wireless, and the wireless network was broadcasting an SSID, and the wireless device plugged into port 3 is consuming and trunking VLAN 200. that would allow you to have a native VLAN that's, say, 300. That's only the addressable interface of the access point itself. This would be a fairly typical configuration. But again, the VLAN is the boundary of the broadcast layer 2 domain. Now, you'll have to instantiate some kind of layer 3 device within that infrastructure on VLAN 200, or else you will not be able to communicate beyond that VLAN. Again, you're also going to need to configure some kind of layer 3 device on the native interface, so the VLAN 300, to allow the access point the ability to communicate within and amongst itself. These are very useful tools when used correctly. It's very solid knowledge, and it's hard fought and hard won. So we've discussed our VLAN challenges with some of the content that I've read lately. We've touched on my frustrations with a number of things that I've been working on. The final thing that we should probably touch on is what happened with our denial of service attack. Our BGP denial of service attack environment. Well, two things happened. One, I'm having a really difficult time getting the virtual interfaces to fully saturate, which means when I have a device that is connected correctly, is able to ping the other routers, I'm starting to have performance degradation before the point at which I'm able to saturate the interface. So I probably need to review how I've configured those and take a deeper look at the infrastructure that we are trying to implement. Using HPing was my ideal scenario. Again, I'm going to be kind of sensitive with how I approach this because I don't want to see my fellow internet provider administrators run into more challenges than they already do. No, that's not my intent. It's quite the opposite. I would much rather have the other providers be defended very well. But I need to be careful with how I approach this. If I give away too much information, that leads to compromise or denial of service conditions. Because for some reason, there are always people that are going to watch a live stream or a video, and they're going to try to do the thing, and they are going to try to do the thing that you describe in the most public and asinine way possible. There's nothing to be done for that. I've thought it through, and I've slept on it for over a week, and I've come to the conclusion that it's best not providing all the details all at once. So, because I'm unable to saturate the interfaces with HPing, I know for a fact that I'm going to start to run into problems showing graphs of full interfaces, because if the CPUs are not cooperating, if they're slowing down and dropping packets prematurely, when the port's not even, I can't even get the Cisco to show 100% utilization on the port, then I probably need to approach this from a different way, another direction. So what I'm considering doing is replacing the Cisco BGP network that I've built to consume this or that I've built for the for HPing to consume, with a MikroTik virtual interface within a standard VirtualBox image. It's either that or use some kind of open source firewall in a much more constrained manner that still has the ability to do SNMP output. So I can show you a pretty graph that's captured the 5-minute intervals of traffic. And in this way, I can show you the effectiveness of clamping the traffic based upon the SNMP output of the routers and firewalls and switches involved. So one might ask, how are we going to do that? Well, we would accomplish that by directing our syslog output to one of the tools that I wrote quite some time ago. Now, this isn't how I defended the internet service provider that I worked with in the past. I had actually added another element of the defense. Is we were using artillery from David Kennedy in front of our infrastructure. In other words, there were public facing internet ports that were running artillery, and any IP addresses that were not allocated or assigned within the network, I was directing the traffic bound for them at the artillery host. I also created a constellation of other artillery hosts on various web providers for as cheap or free as I could get away with. For example, the AWS free tier, perfectly capable of running artillery. So taking the input of all those, or taking the output of all those as the input for the bandlister and equalizer tools, I was able to crudely construct a manner by which I could either shut or block shut the interface or block the traffic and drop it, and then push that traffic out further with the help of BGP community strings. Now, that is something that's a little bit more intricate than the lab that I initially designed. However, the lab supports it. We'll likely have to do a little bit more configuring. I don't have it working yet, but I can soon. But using BGP community strings, we can push upstream the block list and preclude any traffic that's coming in from the upstream provider's interface. How do we do that? Well, it's very simple. BGP community updates and BGP routing information is communicated between the interfaces connected as a DSCP or differentiated services protocol priority of EF, Echo Foxtrot. That's the second highest priority, FF being the highest priority, and that's reserved for specific messaging regarding the ports, the interface activities itself. There's actually very little that travels at FF priority, but EF priority is realistically the highest priority. That being said, you can configure this, and you could, in theory, provide FF as the DSCP value that you are utilizing to service your updates. Regardless, quite some time ago, I had written a blog post that someone had read, and the result was Apple had decided to tag all their updates as DSCP EF. So if you're trusting the upstream provider to provide you with packets that have differentiated services protocol details within them, it's likely a good idea to constrain the application of the DSCP flag to only your BGP neighbor or your peer. So if you're peering with people, obviously you would list the BGP speakers of those peers and perhaps also the routing infrastructure behind it. But you would never want to accept blindly the traffic priority that is provided by an upstream by an upstream traffic source that's not your carrier and that's not your provider. very complicated stuff, lots of moving parts. Think very carefully before you consume that traffic. One of the cool things about, say, a MikroTik implementation is you have the ability to wipe all the QoS flagging very easily, and make sure that you are prioritizing and bucketing your traffic correctly, without too much overhead. It's relatively reasonable in my experience. So that covers our routing and switching and our other complaints, hacking related, and the state of the lab. Another thing that has consumed my time was on Saturday, Sunday. As folks figured out, I'm very much a night individual. On Saturday and Sunday, we went ahead and reviewed the Aramis platform. Project Aramis was created by Peter Schauker and some of the folks that are involved with Nearshore Cyber. And they have provided a mapping of the NIST NICE framework to a series of questions that allow one to not only assert one's competencies, but also validate one's competencies through the course of an 8-hour test. It's split up into 2-hour chunks. And if you're like me, you'll just brute force and in ignorance of any option, you'll grind through it within a day. However, it does give you the luxury of splitting those the 8 hours into 2-hour segments, which is probably what reasonable and sane people would do. Instead, I plowed through it all at once, and let me tell you, the onslaught of it was a barrage of questions. It spanned much of my knowledge and reached beyond it. I can prove it. As a matter of fact, there's the score that I achieved was 87% or something along those lines. Slightly higher. There was a fraction involved, but I don't recall because it's 3:34 on the East Coast, and I forget. Mea culpa. But that being said, after taking this, I went and got quite a bit of sleep and recovered and felt quite accomplished, and hadn't done a whole lot outside of the bug bounty stuff since then. So today I allocated a little bit of time to catch up, to do the live stream, to make a fancy ass intro, and also to create a nice video montage that went with the music that I created. So yes, the music. If you don't like it, sorry. If you don't like the video montage, or if you were the vehicles that were driving slowly down the street, I'm more than willing to take those out as well. But you're going to have to try really hard to prove that it was. At any rate, I hope that I don't get flagged for some kind of copyright infringement, because I created the music myself. I own the music, I own the video, I own the content. But somehow life finds a way. At any rate, I completed the Aramis assessment in the wee hours of Saturday morning into or Saturday evening into Sunday morning, and I must say my head was hurting by the end. It had really made me think very hard, very quickly. The pace that I established for myself after the first couple of questions was about 2 minutes or less per question. And sometimes there's 2 or 3 paragraphs worth of text that needs to be read in order to comprehend the situation that you're opining upon, and then the answers. So the nice thing that I will say about this evaluation is there are no bullshit answers. There are incorrect answers, but there are no gotchas. They are not trying to trip you up, as some certification exams do. There's little use of negative query language. In other words, they had not asked even once, in what scenario would you not do this type of thing and why? That kind of reasoning, testing the ability of somebody to invert logic while they are trying, that's simply not encountered in a professional environment. My CISO or CEO is not going to walk into my office and go, hey, can you tell me the reasons why we would not go about doing such and such a way? No, they're going to ask it more bluntly and probably more directly than even I would care. And if it's fraught with inaccuracies with regard to the particulars, so be it. That was the type of questioning that was available within the security analyst. I can't speak to the security engineer or other lower tiers, but I'm sufficiently advanced in my career to the point where I felt I would take the security architect assessment. And what was interesting was on the self-assessment, I scored a 100% match with security engineer. But I proceeded to that was the self-assessment portion. I proceeded to take the questions for the I forget how they term it, but for the differentiated or differential of the between. Suffice it to say that when you take the assessment, the self-assessment questionnaire, you come up with a percentage match to the role that you're shooting for. And let's say on a 5-point scale, I came out at a 4. But that was how I assessed myself and my own knowledge. Then when I go to test and I take the test, the exam for the security architect role, I find that I am, in fact, pretty well aligned with the security architect, and I'm underselling myself as a security engineer. That discrepancy kind of shocked me because I've had apprehension when I've applied to certain types of roles, particularly because I hadn't quite worked as a security architect yet. That said, I found that oftentimes that was very much my role at other organizations, whether I was stepping into it intermittently or servicing that role full time. So I encourage you, if there's any opportunity for you to set aside 8 hours and complete an assessment, I believe right now their rate is, I think it's like $5 or something for the self-assessment, and perhaps it's $199 for the exam that goes with the self-assessment. And then there's another, I could spend a little bit more money. I think it was $299 or something. I'm probably getting this wrong. I apologize, Peter, if you're watching. But I would pay up to $299 for the remediation phase, which is where they help you come up with a study plan that will guide you from where you are to where you'd like to be. That is very exciting, and I look forward to the release of that. It doesn't appear that it's available yet, but as I haven't checked since Sunday, but as of right now, they had not provided a link to continue on in my studies. So there is, in fact, a roadmap. It is in place, and as soon as it drops, I will probably pony up and be one of the first ones to check that out. So again, that's Project Aramis. If you haven't checked out their website or been to it, I would encourage you. Let me screen share, and where is that? Aramis, Project Aramis, Aramis Insight. Let me screen share. Here we go. This is what it looks like when you log in. Uh, they call it a verification journey, where you assert, you challenge, you reconcile, you commit to the studying, and potentially you may be invited to lead. So right now I have a tested trust score of 26. The assertion I got 3.6, so out of 5. I didn't quite align with the security architect role in my self-assessment. Um, However, I will say, yeah, the assertion is rating your experience across 41 nice framework work roles. The 15-minute self-assessment questionnaire establishes your baseline profile. So insulting your intelligence any further would probably be slightly rude, but suffice it to say, there's a report that comes with it, job match recommendations, and up to 10 trust score points. So I received 7 out of 10. So you figure a 70%. And then when I challenged myself, there's 300 of these questions. It's a 4-hour timed assessment. Maybe I time dilation, right? When you're studying something versus when you're actually looking back, and we've discussed this before. Detailed competency report and up to 30 trust score points. So reconcile is the next step, which is where you would validate your credentials through a 45-minute live interview with an industry expert who reviews your experience. I think they consume, I believe they consume the resume, credentials, work history, yes, work history validation, reference cross check, and up to 60 trust score points for performing that. Commit is the monthly coaching where you could do a gap analysis and get that gap closed. So I would definitely say with an 87.3%, let's look at download. I'd have to log back in. So we have the challenge assessment and the work role profile. So overall score was 3.6, which is advanced. Oversight and governance. I've not done a whole lot of compliance related studying, and I haven't done my homework with regard to oversight and governance. I I just know this. I know that's my weak point. Protection and defense is strong. Investigation is very strong. Implementation and orientation extraordinarily, and operation is extraordinarily strong for me. As they indicate, ops is probably my strongest. I'm certified in operations, so it kind of makes sense. Reviewing the top strengths and development areas, I felt that my ComSec was fairly weak, considering the broad range of tasks and duties that are associated with ComSec. And as well as policy and planning, I could definitely work on my policy and planning. Cybersecurity workforce management, yeah, I've not had a lot of cybersecurity direct reports, and I certainly haven't spent a whole lot of time on the curriculum development. That said, the competency coverage analysis indicated that cybersecurity architecture was 100% aligned with what I wanted to do. Enterprise architecture is strong. System security analysis is strong. If you know me, those are very accurate statements. Secure systems development, I would expect to be stronger. I don't know why 49% network operations. I guess that's because I scored the ComSec low. but systems require planning. Network operations is a strength of mine. Systems testing and evaluation is another strong point. ComSec management was fairly weak. Systems authorization, a little bit weaker. Technology research and development, that was a good portion of my career. And still, I didn't grade it as well as I could have. And vulnerability analysis, no, I'm not the strongest at vulnerability analysis. So another pretty gap analysis shown. Let's see how this works. I was indicating my enterprise architecture was more basic and so far as fundamentals. Same with ComSec and systems authorization. But that being said, if you look at my rating, this is why. I rated myself a 0.05 on communication security in management. Cybersecurity policy and planning. Again, I'm not the governance guy. I've not been known for governance. However, the rest of these pretty strong thing. Privacy compliance. Yeah, I'm just not a compliance lead. I'm sorry. I study very hard, a lot of things. Compliance is probably one of the things that I do not study as well as others. Uh, that said, I do have compliance oriented knowledge that is very strong, particularly with regard to payment card processing and things of that nature. Uh, but yes, watching myself go through this and understand the impact on the ratings was very interesting. So, doing the job match analysis, it indicates I'm 100% match for a security architect, for threat hunter, for vulnerability management analyst, for SOC analyst, for security analyst, for security engineer, a title I've held. I've been a SOC analyst, been a security analyst, identity and access management, something that I've not done a whole lot of, but in retrospect, AAA in routing world is very much identity access management. As a cybersecurity specialist, I'm dead on. DevSecOps engineer, right, spot on. Incident responder, yep, done that. Even as a volunteer, I've done that. Detection engineering is strong, likely because of the SIM management experience. Cybersecurity manager, very strong. Cyber privacy attorney. I am not a lawyer. You're gonna look for your legal counsel elsewhere. Cyber risk analyst, 54%. So understanding the trust breakdown, this is where it gives you the overall maximum value of a trust score. I have achieved 7 out of 10 points. So 70% plus means full verification complete, credential ready, verified expert. 40 to 69, challenge complete. 1 to 39, assert only. So at the time I had taken this, I had a current score of 7. So I went on to prove it with challenge. The challenge assessment is rather fascinating. We have a NIST NICE framework breakdown below. They've given it in a very concise manner that I really appreciate. So my validated assessment completed. Uh, Overall challenge score 87.3%, which is excellent. Uh, Chapter 1 moment of truth, yes, very true. Validated strength 10 of 11. So I had strength shown in testing for of things security, access controls, crowd security, communication security, which is surprisingly better than I thought. Cryptography, which is a strength. Cloud security should be a very, very high score for me because I've spent much of my life integrating infrastructure with cloud and doing on-prem stuff. So, yes, working for an on-prem provider, but still having and maintaining that foot in the cloud to be able to provide resiliency. OS security, 77%. Yeah, we can't know it all. DevSecOps is strong. That's my preferred domain. If someone were to ask me questions, supply chain security is strong. Uh, as a matter of fact, I've worked through supply chain vulnerabilities within SIM platforms, which is kind of fun. Asset management is a little bit weaker than AI security, but going through these things, thinking through the specific scenarios or situation, I've applied these competencies. I could discuss that recent vulnerability assessment I conducted. We did that at the beginning of this call, or the beginning of this live stream. Cryptographic implementations I've deployed, yeah, not a whole lot lately. But that being said, everything uses SSH and everything uses TLS. So those things are strong points. I took that for granted. Uh, so looking at cyber resiliency, I'm loath to see this, but cyber resiliency is something I'm eager to see the gap closed on. Uh, there is development opportunity in one of the 11 competency areas assessed, cyber resiliency. Focus on that and should be much better shape, hands-on lab work, mentorship. Probably going to be a little bit more mentorship than labs because resiliency is generally something that's uh, well, trying to keep things alive. But self-perception versus reality, this kind of didn't render quite right. I don't know. I don't think. I would think it would show a delta or provide the insight, which would be some kind of metric between the self-assessment and the delta. Nitpick the report. But this was the competency radar was quite revealing and was gave me a really good feeling that yes, this is a 70% mark, and I exceed in all but one dimension of the NIST NICE framework mappings. This is very encouraging. I thought that was the most impactful graphic that could be provided from this report. So I did share that on social media. Um, so the challenge tier is completed. Next step is to do the reconcile tier, a 60-minute expert validation interview, and I look forward to that. It looks like I misquoted their pricing. So the assert is $9, the self-assessment, a little bit more than I thought. The challenge is $199, a little bit less than I thought or remembered. Reconcile is $399, which is more than I thought. But again, I would really be I would really value the personalized L&D plan. Commit. I would commit. I would consider committing to. That's almost as much as my office space. I would probably commit to. I need to get a couple more hours work, but I would probably be willing to commit to coaching based upon what I've seen so far. Um, but yes, I am excited to start the next step, and I went to do that. It's not available quite yet, but this is from the Nearshore Cyber folks. Um, Wonderful people that I've worked with in the past. I can't recommend this high enough. It's truly shown me. Um, I tend to undersell myself, and I know this. Some folks tend to oversell themselves. This analysis does this self assessment does a really good job of showing you what that gap tends to be like. So at any rate, Aramis, projectaramis.com, project-aramis.com. Check it out. Pretty exciting stuff. So we've touched on all of the things that I wanted to discuss. I'm interested in hearing from some of you. Leave comments and questions below. Hopefully next time, it's 3:58 in the morning. I need to get some sleep before I just absolutely fall asleep. And no. I need to go acquire sleep, but please do leave me your input. I want to hear your questions. I'm excited to learn more about the folks that are interested in tuning into this type of thing. Perhaps we'll even have some guests. I don't know who's awake and who's available at these hours, but we'll find somebody. All right. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. We'll catch you later.